It's not Gaudi.
Gaudi. Or it might be Gaudi, twisted Gaudi. Gaudi that is doubly twisted.
I'm in London now. Well, actually, I've traveled to Chatham to meet arguably the best traveled person in the world. The man who, at least on some lists, is the biggest traveler. I'm an hour east of downtown London, about to meet him for the first time in person in front of the station.
Yeah. I'm like, you came early. Okay, it's good that I had a look.
I went out that way. So.
Oh, okay, that's the way the people who don't have tickets go out.
Meet Palle, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world.
My name is Palle, and I'm a long-time radio producer. And in July 2016, I set out on a quest to visit every country in the world.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
Harry Mitsidis was born in London to a Greek father and a South African mother, and his grandparents are from Poland and Turkey. So there was always an international element to it all. And this just grew and grew through the years. Already in 2001, he had visited all the countries in Europe, and then he aimed for the whole world, which initially started as a joke, but gradually, as it became within reach, turned more and more into an obsession. Before we sit down for the interview, Harry wants to take me for a stroll through Chatham, the town where he lives. He wanted to show me just how ugly it is. Seriously, Harry is not a huge fan of the architecture here.
Ethnological tours in Chatham should become a big hit.
In what way?
In what way? Well, look, most foreigners come to the UK and they see London. And London is a cosmopolitan city. And then the average visitor may go to Oxford, may go to Cambridge. So the impression they'll get is of a deeply historical, interesting place. Yeah. Chatham puts everything in perspective. It's not that, you're going to see, first of all, you see the architecture. It just looks tired to begin with. Yeah. But now we're going to get down to the main street. And I just want you to look at the people. I'm a person who believes that everyone should be what they are. And I definitely believe that, everyone has a right to, not only to existence, but to think the way they want, to live the way they want.
Yeah.
But when I see this collective result that is manifested in Chatham, it is beyond me. It's like, why? I never come to Chatham. I only come to the center. You'll see where I live, it's about, I'd say a mile away, and it's a world away. Yeah. But here, I only come when I have visitors for what I do, the ethnographic tour. Yeah. And there's one really good Turkish restaurant. So,
So we're how far away from London?
I don't actually know.
It was around half an hour on the train.
Well, it's 40 to 45 minutes on the train.
Minutes, that's right.
We're probably about 80 kilometers out of London. 80, yeah, something like that. It's not very far. And it's definitely, it's actually the cheapest commuter area. If you look at the kind of a general circle around London from where people commute, this is still the cheapest in terms of property prices and things like that. So it's very affordable, and there's a lot of building going on. Especially in the area where I live.
Is the prices going even further down now? Mm-hmm. Maybe somebody think, it's got a bad rep.
No, it's not because of the reputation. It's because of Brexit.
Well, he's also not a big fan of Brexit either.
I'll put it this way. It's become an embarrassment to have a British passport. I never thought that my Greek one would end up being the good one. But there you go. It really, and especially when you see places like Chatham, you just think, why? What happened? What went wrong?
And Chatham is Brexit land. As you mentioned, he has both a UK and a Greek passport. So he has dual citizenship.
So, I'm still hoping I can get the third one somewhere. But
Which one would you prefer?
Well, I was looking into Vanuatu because they have.
What?
Yeah, Vanuatu has an investment program where if you like invest 100,000, you get citizenship, and then you can go to Russia without a visa.
Where is that on the map?
Vanuatu.
Yeah,
It's in the Pacific. It's a country. It's sort of south, well, kind of north of Fiji, or rather west of Fiji.
Okay.
Yeah.
And a UN nation? Yeah.
So of course. Yeah.
So
it's
it
a
is,
UN nation.
So it is on my list too. I just haven't.
Oh, you haven't quite. Okay. So anyway, this is a bit of a joke, the Vanuatu. I'd love to see the Russian's face if I arrive in Moscow with a Vanuatu passport, what he's going to make of that. But anyhow.
Did you make this yourself?
Yeah. Anyway, so this is the high street, and I beg you to observe, in general, take in the sights and see really the other side of England. This is, I think, I wouldn't say it's as bad as it gets. I've actually seen worse. But it's pretty bad in all respects. I mean, the buildings are dreadful. Okay.
Yeah, it's not architectural. It's not Gaudi.
Gaudi, or it might be Gaudi. Twisted Gaudi. Gaudi that is doubly twisted. Anyway, yeah.
This episode is brought to you in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotels around the world. Hotels25.com.
So Chatham is composed of a multi-ethnic group, as you can see. There are very many Romanians here, and also quite.
And they voted for Brexit?
Well, no, they didn't. They didn't have the right to vote. No.
Maybe that is one of the reasons the other people did.
It could be. I mean, I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah.
But the people who are local or English are probably here. Well, Chatham is actually historical too, in its own right, because it has the biggest dockyard of the UK at the time. We're going to pass it as we go down by bus. Mm-hmm. So the historical dockyard, which is, by the way, and it's a tentative World Heritage site, was where boats were built. Like the ships that tried to beat Napoleon were built at Chatham Dockyard, because there's this kind of Medway River that then flows out into the sea. And also the ships that fought the Dutch as well at the time. The Dutch were kind of coming in the 16th, 17th centuries this way. And so the dockyard served as a kind of boat making, and later on there were even submarines built here. So the Chatham Dockyard now still exists. It's been redone into a big museum where you can see ships and stuff. So in that sense, Chatham does have something. And we occasionally, in the dockyard, you're going to see foreigners, busloads, because it's really a worthy site. Here you see a Romanian shop, La Robita. And you see shops of this type, Chocofellas, which sell really bad food, and they're really successful here. And it's a pity it's a podcast and there's no camera, because some things need to be seen to be believed.
No, people make the pictures in their minds. Just close your eyes, dear listener, and what you see is just about right.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a shame that this pregnant mother with a cigarette and the 3 children is not here today. But that is something that you often see around here. This Debenhams, which we're now passing, is one of the 40 that are going to shut, as Debenhams is struggling to keep afloat. It's one of the companies that have been hit by the collapse of the high street, because everyone is buying on Amazon. But obviously Brexit hasn't helped either.
That's the kind of shop that sells most about everything?
Yeah, it's one of the known department stores, I would say, Debenhams. And it's got a presence in most towns. So the Chatham one is one of the ones they listed as closing. A lot of stuff is closing here. So you know, I.
But you do have I saw there's a Burger King and there was a McDonald's, there's a Costa.
Oh yeah.
Subway,
Look,
so you do
this
have
is a very poor area, so we're going to have all the rubbish. So you know, all the Burger Kings, the McDonald's, they're all going to be here, absolutely. And you see, we've got like, you know, all these kind of cheapo electronic stuff. You know, for mobile phones and whatever. But yeah, I mean, you can sense for yourself. I'm a sociologist. I studied sociology, so for me, this is very interesting. You know, I love observing and analyzing society. So, but to be honest, although I'm enjoying it now, if I come here alone, I usually go home really angry or in a really bad mood. You know, so yeah.
Have you lived here for a long time?
No, thank goodness. No. I've lived.
What was the reason you decided to move here?
My partner got a job here, and we took it and we came. So you know, I don't really mind where I live because I'm never in one place for very long.
No, you're still traveling. How many days a year?
Look, many of my travels are not really travels. I mean, if you define travel as being away from home, I would say 220, 230 days I'm traveling. But a lot of that is like visiting my parents in Greece or, you know, trips which are not adventurous. Like, well, now I was with my parents. We hadn't been on a trip for a long time, and we went for a 5-day driving tour in Slovakia. So, okay, I mean, it is a trip, but it's not what I call global exploration. So,
but when you do the adventurous stuff, do you normally travel alone, or do you take your better half?
No, I like traveling alone. I think it's the only way to really travel. On occasion lately, because the places have become more difficult and more expensive, we sometimes have organized small groups of advanced travelers, but in general, I like traveling alone. I actually like being alone. So this is the good Turkish restaurant. It's really good. I mean, you know, it's fabulous. So this place is saving grace, and occasionally we come here.
The taze?
Taze means fresh in Turkish. Yeah, here you have a little bit of kind of. I think this is Georgian. I'm not sure. Georgian architecture.
No, that's actually
the Tudor house.
Tudor house, you know. And it's actually beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the kind of old.
Compared to the rest of the street, it stands out.
It does, because it's the only beautiful street. So this is Chatham High Street. So you know, it's not all bad, but you know, coming here and seeing the kind of demographic is really a bit disappointing. And I keep on thinking, you know, nowhere in Europe necessarily would you see something like this.
There are places in Denmark,
maybe
just
some areas. Yeah.
Not to put my country down.
No, I mean, you know, I usually think of Scandinavia as kind of the epitome of chic or whatever, you know, kind of understated elegance. Let me put it that way.
Let's keep it at that.
Yeah, yeah. You don't want
on
me
behalf
to be
of
disillusioned.
Visit Denmark. I totally agree.
Okay.
When we come back, we've taken a bus ride to the part of Chatham where Harry lives. It is much nicer. And then Harry surprises me when this 47-year-old man takes out his phone to catch something.
I'm a fan of Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah.
So
really?
So there's a number of Pokestops there, and I often come to catch them.
Produced by radioguru.co.uk. This is the Radio Vagabond, and my name is Palle Bo. Stay with us. I got an email on listener@theradiovagabond.com I'd like to share with you. It's from Mattel. She calls herself a Guinean girl at heart. Hello, Palle. I can't recall how I came across your podcast on your time in Conakry in Guinea and your site, but it was definitely soothing in a weird way, as if I was there walking through the city with you. Perhaps the many years you have in radio, or me being a Conakryka. Conakry definitely has a way to pull us in and seduce us to leave us heartbroken or head over heels. And so I understand the title of Falling in Love with Conakry even though some of your friends did not enjoy it as much as you did. John's comment about his experience and your views on the amount of trash pushed me into writing this email. The experience John has in his country is the same experience young Guineans are facing in their mostly beloved home. Opportunities are there for the outsiders, while a large number of Guineans can't make ends meet, and landlords ask also a minimum of 6-month rent deposit, very out of reach for more than 80% of the population due to the low employment rate. As to your point on people not seeming to care much about the growing mountains of trash everywhere you turn, there are so many basics not accessible, or learned that it's almost comical. Not accessible as the leaders of the country are not allocating resources towards making it a priority, coupled with the population lacking the basic understanding of civic duties. I thoroughly enjoyed your podcast and felt a little bad by the taxi motor ripping you off by charging you 30,000. I look forward to catching up on your previous adventures. Regards, a Guinean girl at heart, Mattel. Thank you so much for your wonderful email, Mattel. If you also want to drop me a line and tell me where you are and what you're doing right now, and maybe like Mattel, a little bit about what you thought of an episode, please use this special email address for this, listener@theradiovagabond.com. You can also send me a voice message on WhatsApp. The number is +45 40 105 105. This episode is supported in part by Hotels25.com. It's a website that helps you find the best prices on hotel rooms and guest houses and hostels around the world in one simple search. Hotels25.com. You should try it out. It's best price guaranteed. Now, back to the show. After a short bus ride, we came to a much more beautiful part of Chatham. It's by the marina with lots of sailboats, and this is where Harry lives.
So this actually looks a bit Danish or Dutch, or I don't know.
It does, yeah.
You know, so this is an island, St. Mary's Island, and it's very recent. It used to just be a swamp, and then at some point it was like a convicts' quarters or whatever, because there was a penal colony here as well. But anyway, this has recently been developed. All these houses, they may look a bit traditional, but they're all new. And this is really quite nice, you know.
And
so this is where I live.
harbour with a lot of ships here.
Yeah, I live there. So you can actually see my window. It's let me see one. Yeah, I think, see that side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go, you see the lines, so 1, 2, just above the third one, you see some sort of flowers in the middle. That's my flat, our flat. So as you see, this is quite pleasant. One could do worse than this.
Harry is a 47-year-old man, so I was a bit surprised when he's waving his smartphone around as we're walking towards the apartment. He didn't strike me as someone who's into Pokemon Go.
I'm a fan of Pokemon Go.
Of what?
Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah.
So
really?
So there's a number of Pokestops here, and I often come to catch stuff because unfortunately my connection from there is not strong enough. So I cannot get them, even though we're so near, but it's out of range. I know, it's funny, isn't it?
That surprised me a little bit.
No, you know what? I'll tell you this. I know everyone thinks what's wrong with you, but it's actually a great game, and I find it very relaxing. I think there's nothing that relaxes me as effectively as Pokemon Go. Like when I'm playing, I forget everything else.
I remember when I was about to start traveling, that's when the hype was really high 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And my daughters, they were totally into it. They're not anymore, but they were totally into it and said, "Oh, Dad, you need to do this because when you're going traveling, you're going to be the world champion." So I guess you have more than most people if that's something you do.
No, I'm not that committed to it. I mean, I enjoy it, but the other day there was a traveler meeting, and there's one guy there, Harris is his name, and he's really into it. I mean, he's on the Pokemon all the time, literally. I do it whenever I remember and whenever, you know, a little bit every day, but not that much.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
So now we're here in this beautiful apartment, Harry and I, with a beautiful view and a nice cup of tea and a biscuit. No, nice cup of coffee. It was just because this is so British to say a cup of tea.
Yeah, a cup of tea. But you opted for coffee, being Scandinavian.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay.
Yeah, and you mentioned it briefly when we were walking that you're half Greek, and that's your last name that comes from that.
Yeah, Mitsidis.
Mitsidis, and a little bit tricky to say.
Well, it sounds like Mercedes if you think about it,
okay.
More or less. So yeah, my mother was born in Cape Town. My father was born in Athens. But my grandparents on both sides were born in different countries. So my mother's parents were born in Poland, and my father's parents were born in what is now Turkey. So they were refugees in Greece. But I was born in London, lucky me, in the same hospital as Prince Harry. So I share with him not only the name, but also the place of birth. Only I don't share the title.
No. Well, I can tell you that I am so Danish as it possibly can get. My parents, they did studies going generations back, and I think my mother went back 10 generations, and they're all from the same part of probably a little bit of inbred.
Oh dear. Well,
no,
okay.
I'm 230% Danish, so okay. I can't say that there's anything else. But do you think that's that background is one of the reasons that you had the urge to go out and explore the world?
I guess so. You know, when you grow up with two languages, two cultures, two of everything, I guess it already gives you an advantage. And at the same time, I mean, I know other people who are born to parents of different nationalities, and often they kind of become more of the one. You know, and the other one kind of fades away. And I think for many years I was much more Greek. You know, as I was growing up, I grew up in Athens, so you know, I think I was kind of Greek for a long time in my head and in mentality. And then when I came to the UK to do my master's degree, something changed. I don't know. I just so naturally fit into, because I did my master's in Oxford, and it was very international, people from everywhere, and I was like, this is me, this is who I really want to be, you know, and I'd never had that before. So I think, you know, I did definitely have the kind of starting point based on the two cultures, but I think it was more being exposed to such an international environment. Yeah.
Harry Mitsidis is the founder of NomadMania.com, a community for extreme travelers and a website that divides the world into 1,281 regions. When you fill out the regions you've been to, you will appear on different rankings, which includes cities, sites, museums, islands, airports, and lots more. For that, Nomad Mania is quite unique. It's the only website listing travel achievement through so many aspects, and the aim is to create an interactive, multicultural community of travelers, which inspires travel while being a true reference to all 1,281 regions of the world. On the master ranking list, Harry himself is number 1. He's been to 1,188 of the 1,281 regions. Obviously, he's been to every country in the world, all the 193 UN nations. He did his last UN country, Equatorial Guinea, in March 2008. Since then, he's been to most of them again. But there's so much more to it than just jumping quickly into a country to say that you've been there. It's about really being there, seeing, sensing, meeting, understanding, and comparing. Traveling has become Harry's way of life, and staying put has become increasingly hard. Am I right to say that you are the biggest traveler in the world? Are you the one that's been to most places on this planet?
No, you're wrong. You're very wrong.
If not you, then who?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I don't think one can say. What does most places mean? I mean, are we looking at countries, at regions, at villages, at volcanoes? I think, there's just too many ways of looking at the world. And I think the idea of biggest traveler or, number one is pointless. I think okay, I am very well traveled. Let's put it that way.
It's so funny you're saying that, Harry, because you created the community and the website Nomad Mania, and you are at least number one on that list.
Yeah, I'm number one.
You say it's not important, and then you went and did that.
Maybe I'm saying it because I'm number one. Now it's easy to say.
I know that you're so modest that you don't like. I heard an interview where he said, "I don't really like to be number one."
I don't. I mean, look, think of an average person and they hear about Nomad Mania and then they'll be like, yeah, but its founder is number one on his own site. I mean, that makes me...
He created the list for himself.
Yeah, but which is not true because the list has been created initially by two of us with a lot of exchanges and then gradually more people got involved. So there's at least... I would say 20 people who have contributed to the final.
Maybe we should just describe a little bit how what it is because you divided the world not only into countries but also into regions.
Yeah, I mean the starting point here is that countries are not enough. So, for example, well, let me put it this way: most people who come to Denmark probably just see Copenhagen,
which annoys me.
Maybe they go to the castle, maybe, and that's it. And that's clearly not enough. Denmark has much more to offer. And if you start like that and then look at every country, start with the big ones. So, if you've been to just Beijing, how can you say that you know China, So the idea is there's much more. And in order to be a real traveler, you need to do much, much more. Yeah. So we've tried to create a list of regions which makes sense, which divides countries in... not only into enough regions for the country itself, but also relative to other countries. Mm-hmm. And also a list which is small enough. Well, maybe 1,281 regions is not that small to you, but if you look at the whole world, I still think that's a doable number. It's not like 5,000, which would really be unmanageable, I think. So that's the idea behind it.
So like Liechtenstein and Andorra, that's one region,
well,
but yeah. Russia is quite a few.
Russia is the most represented because it is the biggest country in the world by far, and Russia, I think, is 93 regions. So that's heavy duty. Yeah.
And actually, I've been to both Andorra and Liechtenstein, and I only spent a day there, or in Liechtenstein's case, an afternoon. I didn't spend the night, but I have still been there. And then I've been a week to Moscow, and I don't feel that I've been to Russia.
Yeah, well, obviously, some places have more to offer. Although Liechtenstein, actually, I don't know if you had a car.
So beautiful.
Did you have a car?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and I did drive around a lot.
I've been 4 times, but I've never been with a car, and I always regret that because I feel next time I'm going to have a car because there's all these little castles kind of up in the mountains somewhere, away from Vaduz. So, I think when you travel, you realize that almost everywhere is interesting. That's the beauty of it, and you cannot give me a place that I will say, oh God, that's boring. You will find something, even if it's just a conversation with the locals. That'll be interesting. Yeah. So, obviously some places have more to offer. And some people feel that our list is being biased towards Europe. There are more regions in Europe than there are. I think Europe has almost 300 out of 1,281. And if you consider how big Europe is, that means Europe has many regions. But I always say, well, we're not only dividing by size of the country. We're dividing based on culture, based on economic importance, based on tourism, tourist appeal. And then, if you look at tourist...
UNESCO sites?
Well, yeah. One of the kind of proxies for cultural value is UNESCO sites. And then if you look at that, with the exception of China, it is European countries that have by far the most. And, you know, I'm definitely not ethnocentric, and I'm not the kind of person who will say, you know, Europe is better than anywhere else. It doesn't work like that. But, you know, you do have much more tourism in Europe. You know, France has always been the number one country for tourist arrivals. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Spain recently passed the US to be number 2. And then, you know, if you look at the top 10, okay, you have the US and you have China in the top 10, but everything else is in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, ultimately giving Europe 300 regions and dividing small countries more, I think makes sense for Europe, you know. So, yeah, you have, for example, I don't know, Niger has the same amount of regions as mainland Denmark. You know, and Niger is enormous.
It's a little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger, but, you know, you can then argue, yeah, okay, it's much bigger. Niger is one of the top 20 countries in size, although you can argue that Denmark is also, if you count Greenland as part of it. and then there's more regions for Denmark. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously Denmark has more obvious sites. It has more World Heritage sites, more tourist arrivals. It's economically a much, much, much stronger country than Niger. So for all these reasons, I think that giving the same number of regions there is justified, you know.
Nomadmania.com is a very interesting site. And if you're somebody who travels a lot and like to keep track of where you've been to, you should register. It's absolutely free, and anyone can join.
Yeah, anyone, as long as they fill in their regions. So what we're doing now is we're being picky, and if we see that someone signs up and they just signed up and haven't actually looked at the list and filled that up, we will write to them very politely and say, well, fill it up. It doesn't matter how far you've been, you know, okay, maybe you've only done 5 countries, but you're interested in the world. That's fine to us. But yeah, as long as you're a member of the community, you're very welcome.
Yeah. Then I must finish. I have ticked off a lot of the boxes, but I still need to, because some of the regions I've been to in my life, I don't remember what it is, so I need to do a little bit of research. But it's a super cool site, and you can, there's a map and all kinds of lists, and it's really interesting.
Well, my favorite feature is the one, I mean, let me put it this way, you get out of it what you put into it. And it does take a lot of time if you want to do it properly. I have filled in all the dates of my visits, or my first visits. Mm-hmm. And the result of that is that I can get a really cool map by year. So I can look back at, say, 2002 and see how much of the world I had done by then. Oh, nice. And then, you know, year by year, I see more regions, and then, you know, most of the map is full now. So, but again, most people don't do that. They just tick without putting in a date, which is fine, but then they're not going to get this cool kind of map through the years because we don't have this information. Yeah.
I need to find an afternoon to do that.
I hope you find the time.
I will, because I love playing with it. And then recently you also started a podcast with Rick Azarian.
Yes. This was actually Henrik Jeppeson's idea. So Henrik is an ambassador for Nomad Mania. He decided, after years of not wanting to join us, he finally decided this is a really cool site. And I'm really happy about that, given that he's the most traveled Dane, I think, and by far, and also that he's so young and so knowledgeable about travel. So his idea was, you know, Nomad Mania should have a podcast. You know, it shouldn't only have a newsletter, which is a written interview, because we do written interviews with travelers. It should go a step further.
Welcome to the Nomad Mania podcast. Nomad Mania divides the world into 1,281 regions, and it's an excellent website which allows you to track your travels, whether you're chasing 193, TCC, MTB, or, of course, Nomad Mania. It also maintains extensive series like 1,881 different airports, 1,696 festivals, or 2,855 religious temples. The Nomad Mania podcast interviews members who will share their insights and advice as we take deep dives into some of the world's 1,281 most interesting regions. Now it's time for today's episode with your host, Rick Gazarian.
Hey now, welcome to our first episode of the Nomad Mania podcast. I'm your host, Rick Gazarian, and at this time, I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, Henrik Jeppesen. Hello, Henrik.
Hello, Rick. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, and let's take a moment, and can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, sure. My name is Henrik. I'm from Denmark. I completed the quest to visit every country at days of 27, and now I'm focused on Nomad Mania.
Excellent. And how many days did it take?
So Rick Gazarian, who is another big traveler and an associate of Nomad Mania. He's recently started.
He's been on the Radio Vagabond as well, and I met him a couple of times, and actually just by coincidence he's here in London now, so I'm having lunch with him tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm meeting him on Thursday.
Yeah, that's nice. And then you have the guy who's doing the voiceover. He's got such a good voice.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
No, I'll put a link in the show notes and on the radiovagabond.com to both Nomad Mania and to the podcast. I highly recommend both.
Great.
Yeah. That's all we have time for in this episode. My name is Palle Bo, and in a few days we'll be back right here with the second half of my talk to Harry Mitsidis. See ya.